All right, we're going live now, sir.
Okay.
Okay, boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have an incredible guest, a recurring guest with us, one who is going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration, and that is none other than our brother, our student minister, Abdul Halim Muhammad out of Phoenix, Arizona. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, sir. This means a lot to myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast. The first question that we have for you today, sir, is 28 years since the anniversary, or 28 years since the Million Man March. What was the climate like leading up to the Million Man March, sir?
It was electric. I mean, the whole sequence of events just left an indelible impression on me. As you're asking, there are certain things that come to mind. One, it was just electric. I was there when the minister called for me and men. It was in New York City. It was the Jacob Javits Center. And I remember when he called for it. And if I remember, the audience just erupted. He said he wanted to take 1 million men. Now, the minister said that he wished he would take the words back. Right? But I don't know. I didn't have any. Sometimes you can hindsight's 2020. But if I remember my thoughts back then, I thought we were going to do it. I mean, I didn't feel any doubts. I just believed that Allah would bless us. So I was there when he did it. And then it was just electric as the minister went across the country to these various men's meetings. And then in our respective cities, as we were attempting to galvanize support and the kind of enthusiasm for the Million Man March, there were some times I remember when things didn't go well. There were some disappointments, but it was just electric. And that whole time period for the nation, for our cities, it was clearly that Allah was with us. There's one that I remember, Brother Joshua. There's a whole lot, but this one that stuck to mind. There was a pastor in Buffalo. He was a national pastor, very well known. He's passed now, but he was Baptist. And I think it was in 1984, the minister spoke at his church. And it says he was campaigning to help the Reverend Jesse Jackson for his presidential campaign. So he knew the minister, and when the minister spoke at the church, it was packed, and the minister did his thing, and people's response. I remember that pastor's response. It was just electric. Okay, so now that was 84. So now we go 10 years later in 1994. Now I've been calling this pastor, Pastor Bennett Smith, that was his name, and I'm asking him about his support for the Million Man March. So then finally he called me back. And so I'm thinking he's going to call and say, yes, he told me they met, and these, the Baptist preachers met. And I thought he's going to say, yes, we're on board, and we're excited about this and us coming together. But brother, he took a turn I wasn't expected. He said, we met and we're not coming. He said, our God is Jesus. And he just went there on me, right? And I'm stunned. I don't know what to say. So I called the minister. I told him what took place. I told, I'm kind of sad. The minister spared, brother. You could tell in his voice, there was not one scintilla of doubt on his part that we would be successful. So whether they came or not was irrelevant and immaterial. His position was we were going to be successful. And it was his conviction. It was his sense of absolute unwavering certainty that we would be successful that gave me then, that it didn't take didn't take too long. It wasn't down for long because he gave me strength. So it was moments like that that were very precious to me. But the build up to the march was amazing, brother. And the kind of alliances that we were able to create as a result of the Million Man March and the buildup, again, was amazing. So that was the buildup. And all across the country, and so Buffalo did its part. So the minister came, to think it was August, I think, of 1994, something like that. And the venue was packed. Again, these are all men. It was packed. And it was, and I went to several of them across the country when the minister did this. And it was electric. Again, I didn't know what it would look like on October the 16th in 95. I didn't know, but I just had a conviction. I had a certainty that we would be successful. And God bless us, brother, to be successful that day.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Minister. Sister Captain Sultana, Assalamu alaikum salam. Sister Naima, Assalamu alaikum salam. Brother Daniel E. Brother Nelson Ramos, alaikum salam, dear family out of Massachusetts. And thank you to all of our YouTube family as well. Sister Auntie, Brother Musa, Brother Kente, everyone who shows love on YouTube as well. Sister Nia, everyone who shows love on YouTube. My next question for you, sir, is, were you ever afraid? I've interviewed certain people and they said they had like going away dinners to the Million Man March because they didn't know what to expect, if they'll make it back to their families and things of that nature. Were you nervous?
I wasn't, no. I mean, I'm surprised. That's my first time hearing that. There was, I had no fear of that at all. There was a time though, brother Joshua. So when the minister spoke October the 7th, in 1985 at the Feld Forum, there was I think this was my only time I remember of all the years that I've been various venues that the minister spoke in. There was a fleeting moment when I was afraid. And some fear came up because if you remember, the Madison Square Garden was packed and the Feld Forum was packed. Brother, there was, I think we could fit 30,000 in, but like 50,000 came. And these were people who came. It was, brother, it was crazy. And there was a moment when they wanted to get in and it started to get really kind of ugly. And for a moment, there was some fear that came. Right? So this is my first time thinking that something chaotic could happen, that something chaotic could materialize. That was the only time. And I remember Brother Khalid, he was the Supreme Captain at that time. And so Brother Khalid, I was right there when he did this. So there were these barriers that kept our people from getting inside the Madison Square Garden. And he removed those barriers. He said, let them in, let them in. And all our people just came inside. But that was then, it was fleeting. But there was a moment when I did say that I was a little nervous, a little concerned that this thing may be crazy because they wanted to get in, Brother Joshua. But for the Million Man March, no, that never crossed my mind. When we were there, I got there. Well, let me just share this. So as we were going, we drove to DC. And so when we drove to DC, we would go through the back roads because it was faster than going through the interstate. And there were various places that we would go to get gas and whatnot, stopping for, refreshments, what have you, going to the restroom. And there was one, I think it was Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It's where they play the World Series. Not the World Series, but the College World Series. So that was a place we'd always stop when we drove to DC. So we stopped there. Now this is kind of back roads. We stopped there. Every place we would stop for gas or refreshments to go to the restroom, full of brothers. I mean, packed. Typically, brother, it was very sparse. People there, brothers packed in those places. And I remember one time we stopped, and there was this white woman. I guess she worked there, and she kind of nervous. She said, "Where are you all going?" Right? And we said, "We're going to the Million Man March." And she said, "Oh, that's good. That's good." And she's nervous, right? But it was so that was the drive there. So we get to DC. Now, DC is like, brother, like a parking lot. I mean, just car. The streets are absolutely jam packed with cars full of black men. All of the streets, brother. It was on a Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. I got there on Sunday, and it was, I mean, electric. And I remember, so I go back to my hotel, and I'm watching on the news, and it's all on the news. All they're talking about, right, is about the Million Man March. And there was one newscast, and this guy, this white man, was on there, and they're talking about a million men coming, and they're skeptical whether it's going to happen, and they had this schematic on the television showing what it would take for a million. See, a million men, you know what it'd be like, and they showed the schematic of the mall, and they were showing how many people had to be there, brother. We blew that away. I mean, blew it away. Absolutely blew it away. And that was on the 15th. So now I'm not a professional counter. So I got there a little before before 5 o'clock at the mall in the morning. And I don't know. So this is, what I'm about to share with you, in $1 will get you a bag of potato chips. So how valuable what I'm about to tell you is, but I don't know, it looked like about 50,000, bro. This is 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mm.
And they were playing, there was this brother playing the drums. He was saying, too black, too strong, too black, too strong, right? And it wasn't the nation, just some brother was doing this, right? And at that time, brother Joshua, I knew we were going to be successful. At 5 o'clock, I had confidence before, but when I got to the mall, I said, no, we're going to blow this thing away. And Allah blessed us with a success that left an indelible impression on me, brother. So again, that's the lead up going up into the mall that day for that Monday.
Beautiful. All praise due to Allah. Yes, sir. And thank you for people showing love all around the world. My next question for you, sir, is the women, the sisters, how was their role in the Million Man March and leading up to the Million Man March and then lead the Million Man March?
Invaluable. And their presence, their participation is really underappreciated and underreported. Not only the women, because what they did, brother, so we know about the march and we know about the presence of the brothers. So the minister called for a million, nearly 2 million brothers come. But what's not emphasized, even by those of us in the nation, what's not emphasized, it was a day of absence. So even though the brothers made a sacrifice. It was a Monday. All marches are on Saturdays, but the minister wanted us to make a sacrifice on that Monday. But our sisters did too. They stayed home. They were watching us on television. They were proud. Some of them telling their husbands and their fathers and their sons, no, you going to the march. You going. You getting out of here and you going, right? So their presence, brother, their participation and their absence. So don't forget, we didn't go to school that day. We didn't go to work that day. It was a day of atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility, but it was also a day of absence. So remember now, so here's Black America is opting out on that day. So we saw what took place. There was the presence of the brothers on the mall, but now white folk are also counting. There was an unseen reality that really we didn't emphasize too much, or we still don't emphasize, and that was the day of absence. And there's another element, brother, that we don't emphasize, that when we were there at the mall, the government, they left. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that two gods, they can't rule at the same time. So here we are at the seat of the government of the United States of America. So here is now the new ruler making their presence. And then what happens? So now Congress shuts down. So the Supreme Court shuts down. The president, Bill Clinton, he leaves the city. Why? Because the new ruler is making their presence. So there was the day of absence. And there was the presence of the new ruler who is going to be there. And there's another unappreciated or underrepresented or under spoken about element, brother. So almost 2 million were there. 85% of those brothers were Christian. 85%. And they're responding to this Muslim who's calling them. Now, again, from our vantage point as Black people, this was a day that was marvelous to us. There were Muslims and Christians and Rastas, and there were brothers who were Bloods and Crips and Al-Rukins and all of these, so-called gangbangers, right? And it's a day of peace. No one's fighting. But what has to be appreciated was now, so when the minister comes up and to speak, and he gives a salutation, I greet you with the greeting words of peace, assalamu alaikum. There was this roar, wa alaikum salam, from the audience, which was 85% Christian, brother. So in the Quran, Pharaoh was afraid that Moses and Aaron would change the religion of the children of Israel. So while we saw this, it's this wonderful day of Black men coming together and this wonderful day of Black people in unity. And for the nation, we're so proud because they responded to our man. They responded to the call of God coming through our man. But the enemy saw it differently. The enemy recognized there was an army that the minister now was cultivating in response to what is said in the book of Ezekiel. So there are these dry bones in the valley. And so the Son of Man, he speaks to the dry bones and they start moving, they start rattling, but they don't come to life. And then the Son of Man goes back to God and tells them about the response. And then so God tells the Son of Man, well, prophesy on the winds. Winds hit the dry bones, and the scripture says they became an exceedingly great army. And so what we were seeing, brother, is the seminal expression of this army that the minister is calling. One last thing about that, and then of course, whatever you want to ask about the Million Man March, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said that he knew the exact date, brother, when he would have 10 million followers. And so in our lessons, it says Mr. Muhammad cracked one atom into 10 million parts.
That's right.
And so that's our brother, the Honorable Mr. Farrakhan, cracking him to get our people to that 10 million followers. So I don't know, I've never heard him say this, Brother Halim talking, but I believe that what took place at the Million Man March was and is a part of that process of God's creating this army, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad getting his 10 million followers, which again is just the beginning. He knew the exact date it would happen.
Beautiful. Go ahead and teach, my minister. Yes, sir. All praises due to Allah. And people are showing love to you all around the world. Dr. Jennifer Muhammad, ASA, she said, you are a student minister. Sister Captain Sultana, that's right. True. One love, family. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother Adio. Brother Nelson says, I thank Allah for allowing a glimpse of heaven that day. Alhamdulillah. And Kelvin Stevenson says, peace. This is his kind of conversation. Peace to you, brother, and peace to you all. Great. Thank you very much. All right. My next question for you, sir, is you had the men and the women. What about the children, the young people who were there? How did it affect them? I
didn't see a lot. There were a lot of children that were there. It was, you have to remember, brother, this was for the men, right? So it was amazing because one thing I think, Brother Joshua, that we don't do a good job in the nation. We could do a much better job. And that is sharing our history with those who weren't there. So now for me, I was there. Your father was the supreme captain at that time. And so you coming up, you knew about the Million Man March, you know about the Million March. My children, again, so that culture in the nation, we know about. And some of us make the mistake in believing that everyone knows about it. But the enemy has done an effective job of, this is 28 years, of stealing 28 years of history from our youth. So, brother, I can't tell you the numbers, but I would feel pretty positive, brother, if we would go take right now a survey out and ask those who are 25 and under, even 30 and under, what do you know about the Million Man March? I think we would be stunned. I think that we would be alarmed to find out how many know nothing about the Million Man March.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that on that day, during that time period, because it so dominated the Black experience, brother. I mean, white folk and Black and others were talking about the Million Man March. Everybody was, right? And we have to remember, and not only that, but the Million Man March still resonates, not only with us, but others. So Donald Trump, his people, MAGA, Make America Great, they call themselves, they have their MAGA Man March,
yes, sir,
right?
Yes, sir.
And they had in Egypt, I think it was Million Man March, something like that. But there's so many, because the Million Man March, not only did it impact the psyche of Black America, but it really impacted the psyche of the world. So the children at that time, they were caught up in that wonderful euphoria. But unfortunately, we have not done a good job in being able to make sure that not only our children, but our people know about the Million Man March. And the enemy, like I said earlier, the enemy has done an effective job of robbing us and robbing our people of that history. Oh, and if I could say this, brother, one of the things that I remember a lot about the march, I think it was Brother Leonard Farrakhan. I forgot who told me. But remember the brother who was the director for Boys in the Hood? What's brother's name?
John Singleton. Yes, sir.
John Singleton, right? So I think it was Brother Leonard who told me to escort him because he wanted to take this picture. So I was with him, and we went high up on the Capitol. So we were down, the men assembled at the march. I was blessed to be on the stage. I'm looking around all the people, right? But we went higher up on the Capitol, and so we had this beautiful panoramic view that I could see of the march, right? I wish I'm not a social media person. I'm not the camera kind of person. I regret it afterwards, but I wish I had taken a picture with brother there. I mean, I talk about it now, but I wish I had some kind of documentation of it. But I was with him when he took the picture, and I was able to see the assemblage from this high vantage point, and it was awesome, brother. It was awesome. And so I am just, as you're asking me these questions, it brings black and back a flood of memories of what took place that day. I am so grateful. I'm so grateful for the Honorable Mr. Farrakhan. And I'm so grateful that Allah had me sane enough that I was there, that I participated. And so one day I can tell my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren that I was there at the Million Man March and my contribution to it, because I believe that its impact will continue to unfold. Its impact and its import will continue to be evaluated. And what it did for us will continue to find resonance and will continue to find its significance. And I thank Allah that I was there. I'm grateful to our Savior, brother, that I was able to be there. So when you ask these questions, it is for me it brings back so much for me, brother, on that day.
Beautiful. All praises due to Allah. That's incredible. And once again, our minister, we thank Allah for you and the sacrifices that you have made and the sacrifices that your family has made to help establish Islam here in North America. We thank Allah for you and your family. And we continue to salute and give you respect, sir, for all the hard work that you've put in. I wanted to ask you about the OJ Simpson verdict, the trial and the verdict, right, and how important that was to setting the climate and the stage for the Million Man March.
It was huge. Huge. I mean, that OJ, now I'm from Buffalo, don't forget now. So OJ played for the Buffalo Bills, right? That's right. And I remember one day when OJ, I went to some store, it was a clothing store. He was there. And he said, I remember saying, what what did he say? He said all the women are in Buffalo, some stuff, right? OJ was kind of right. But he said something, right? But he was no, now with that trial, brother, you have to remember you're young. You don't remember the trial, do you, brother? Do you remember?
No, sir. No, sir.
Before your time, right? So OJ Simpson, that trial was like, it would be like LeBron James being on trial. It would be like Shaquille O'Neal or Kobe when he was still here. I mean, OJ was that transcendent athlete. He was on TV and commercials and the movies. And at the height of his football career, he was the transcendent athlete. One of the things I judge by transcendent athlete, does my mother know that? My mother not in sports. You know? Now, if my mother knows who you are, that means you are big and you're huge. So she knows OJ. Everybody knows OJ Simpson. Okay. So then when OJ is on trial for this murder, brother, it was on every single day on television. It was the trial of the century. It was every single day. So, and I would watch it every day. Well, not watch it, but I would, well, at least almost every day watch some part of it because it was on like CNN, on the cable news. They didn't play it on like ABC, NBC, or CBS, but like CNN and whatnot. They would play it some part, I think every day, the whole thing. People were riveted. And at the news, they would give summaries of it. It was just explosive. But here's what would take place, though, brother. So white people would have access to the media, and they would give their side. They would give their version. And primarily, we didn't get the opportunity to be able to say anything about it. So most of us, our perspective, our vantage point wasn't really given much, how would you say, wasn't really spoken about. It wasn't really given, on the media. So it was like our voice was silenced. So now come to the day when the jury comes back. Now remember, they only deliberated for 4 hours, brother, 4 hours. And so the city, they wouldn't allow the verdict to be read that day because they allowed the city so they had to go the next day because they were afraid of riots. Because don't forget now, Rodney King had taken place. And so there was a verdict that happened, and our people, were displeased with the verdict, and just riots took place, and they're afraid because don't forget, racial tension was very high. People were going along racial lines. Primarily black people were OJ Simpson, and primarily white folks were for the prosecution. Of course, there wasn't some of our people prosecution. Some whites were with OJ, but primarily it went down along racial lines. So when the jury had come to a verdict, they wouldn't allow it to take place that day, but it was the next day. Now, it was my feeling because there were a lot of black people on the jury, and I'm like, I don't believe that black people would now I could see them convicting them. But I don't see them convicted in 4 hours. I just didn't see that. And so the next day, now I was at a speaking engagement at Cortland College, a state college in New York State. I'm on my way to DC for the Million Man March. So that morning, they're going to announce the verdict, brother. When they announced it, I'm elated, and I'm in my hotel room. I don't know what I said, but I know what I was loud. And they called, the hotel, the manager or whatnot. They asked me to, calm down or whatnot. I was too loud, right? But my emotional response was the same kind of emotional response that black people all across the country had. Now, white people thought that we were celebrating that OJ Simpson got away with murder. But that's not what I was doing. That's not what we were doing. We were responding because we don't believe that the prosecution made its case. And OJ had the financial wherewithal to be able now to put on a credible defense. I mean, he had Johnny Cochran, who did a magnificent job, brother. Johnny was awesome. And so when so all of this kind of racial issues that OJ's case, that his what he was going through, raised them. And so what it did was feed a narrative for the Million Man March of the reality of Black life in America. Mm. And so then when the verdict was read, again, it just capped it off. So from where I stood, brother, the whole thing with OJ Simpson was divine. What took place there was it added to the kind of the climate where our people saw the necessity, the value of coming together as one. And then OJ and what happened to him and his being acquitted, all it did was just add more fuel to an already burning fire among our people, that the time was right, that the time was divine, and that for us to come together was the only intelligent move for us. And so at that point, it made the Million Man March even easier, brother. So you have to remember, there were a lot of people who, a lot of their brothers, they came on the last minute. Some of them say, if you give a poll, and they said, well, I wasn't going to come, but then they did. There was a divine call that they responded to, brother. And they don't know why they came. I know why they came. They came because of the call of God, brother. And that was their response. But yes, the OJ case and all that surrounded it was a significant part, a significant factor or element of what made the Million Man March what it was.
All praises to an excellent job in medicine. People showing you love all around the world. So Sultana, we thank you for always showing love as well. She says, teach, the glove didn't fit.
That's right. The glove did not fit, brother. Yes, that's right.
And this is Captain Dennis. I think this may be his first time ever watching live. He said, please give his brother the greetings for him. And welcome salam to you as well, brother Captain. And thank you everyone who is showing love.
Can I say one thing, brother Joshua? Captain Dennis, that's my first teacher, brother. Right? He is my first teacher, right? So, when I didn't know anything about Islam, or very little, I mean, what little I knew was insignificant and inconsequential. And so it was the summer of 1982. That's when I first met him, Brother Dennis, right? And so he was my first teacher. I owe a debt of gratitude to him and what he did for me, what he did and is doing, and the sacrifice that he made, and his being a brother to me, a brother and a father. And I remember, brother Joshua, when your father and the Honorable Mr. Farrakhan took Brother Dennis away from New York and took him to New York City, from Buffalo, to New York City, and made him the East Coast Regional Captain, brother. I cried like a baby. I didn't realize all this emotion because he was leaving, and I didn't realize how emotionally attached I was until we let the believers know. And brother, I started boo-hooing like a baby. So I'm just happy you tell me that Brother Dennis is on there watching this. That's my brother. I love him tremendously. He's my first teacher. He's my first guide in Islam, and I'm grateful to him, brother. I'm just very grateful to him.
All praises to Allah. We love to hear the stories. That's what People's Podcast is all about. Thank you all. And as well as a lot of people comment, how can they become a guest on the People's Podcast? Just message me, put in the comments, and if you have any guest suggestions, by all means, please let us know, because we connect the dots all around the world. Thank you very much to all of these stories. Everything is intertwined, so we thank Allah for that. My next question for you, sir, is 28 years later, why is the Million Man March relevant, and the purpose of atonement, is that something that we still need 28 years later?
Absolutely. I mean, it's as relevant, or not more so than it was back then. I mean, I thought Brother Ishmael did a wonderful job of giving a context for the Million Man March, right? And so the Million Man March was really the culmination of what the minister saw of this war. There was a war that he was guided by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to announce to the world, to the government of the United States. And so the minister Initially, he saw the war as a war overseas, that President Reagan met with his Joint Chief of Staff, was playing this war. Over time, he saw this war then that it was a Muslim leader. So Gaddafi, he saw it was Gaddafi initially, but then over time, he saw the Muslim leader was himself. And the Muslim nation that they were going to war was the Nation of Islam, both the little nation and the broader nation. So the movies like Boys in the Hood, like Minister Society, all of these movies that came out, many of us gravitated towards them because we saw them as some representation of Black life, Black experience. But these movies were imported, exports all over the globe. And when they saw us in an ignorant and a savage condition. And we didn't realize that they were setting a stage, an environment to take us out, brother, and the world would be silent as a result of it. So there was, the minister was going across the country saying, stop the killing. And the Million Man March was a culmination of this. And so the minister then not only showed the world a different view of us. So remember, brother, on that day, there was no fighting on that day. On that day, people weren't acting crazy and acting insane and ignorant. I'm from Buffalo, brother Joshua. Rick James is from Buffalo. So I went to a couple of Rick James concerts in Buffalo, right? That was about 19,000. Every Rick James concert I went to, there'd be fighting. They'd be fighting in the stands, fighting on the floor, fighting in the parking lot. And that was about 19,000 people, brother, fighting. Over 2 million Black men, no fighting. 2 million, a day of peace. That day, brother, gangbangers and whatnot, it was a day of peace. So it was a sign or a glimpse of heaven. And then what the minister gave was these 8 stages of atonement, how to build a more perfect union. So he was talking, of course, to the government of the United States and to white America in general, but obviously it had import and relevance for Black America today, for the Nation of Islam today, for the little Nation of Islam and the bigger Nation of Islam, our people in general. It is more relevant, more significant, more important about us now embracing the principles of atonement. From my vantage point, my dear brother, I think we've had a superficial embracing of them. I don't think we will do this and give lip service to it, but a day is coming, an hour is coming when the principles of atonement will embrace them, brother, with the kind of significance and importance it requires, as opposed to just giving lip service or kind of a superficial embracing of it. But to answer your question, absolutely, without qualification, with no doubt, with absolute certainty, that the principles of what took place on that day that undergirded the Million Man March is as relevant then, if not more so, today.
Excellent job. Yes, sir. You teaching from medicine and people showing you love all around the world. Sister Sultana says, people still celebrate Christmas every year. This is a fact, a false birthday they gave to Jesus. The Million Man March is a real day, a holy day, and the real Christmas. Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. All right. My next question for you, sir, is this is something I really wanted to speak about. You from Buffalo to now in Phoenix, Arizona, all these things, you go 1982. What advice would you give to keeping a harmonious environment in the mosque, among the believers and among the ummah, the community? What advice would you give to, speaking of atonement, to keep it within our own communities? What advice would you give to, as far as
That's a wonderful question, brother. That's a wonderful question. I think the first thing is to follow the minister, right? So in the introduction to our lessons, to the instruction to the laborers of Islam, it says this, that the following is the original rules and instructions to the laborers of Islam, the title of Muslim given by our Savior before his departure, of a footnote of a few words of explanation to lay pressure upon their minds of the many errors in the past and present, that they may see the light and walk therein. I thank you, the Elijah Muhammad. But it says the following is the original rules of instruction. So on the one hand, of course, the following is those things, those lessons that are written following what that preamble or the introduction is. But the following is also the act of following the divine servant of God.
Yes, sir.
So Jesus says, he says it like this: pick up your cross, deny yourself, and follow me.
That's right.
In the Quran, it says about Muhammad, it says Muhammad is an excellent example for him who hopes in Allah and the latter day,
That's
and
right.
those who fear Allah much. There's another verse in the Quran where it says, for those who believe and do good, it says, the beneficent will surely bring about love. So a part of us to create an environment or a culture where we are attempting now to produce real love inside of the mosque, the first one is to follow the example. And in my judgment, the best example among us is young Mr. Farrakhan. His love is unconditional for us.
That's right.
And more than that, what he does from my vantage point, brother, so when he says, every time I'm looking at the black man and the black woman, I'm looking at God. In the Bible, Jesus says like this: blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
That's
and
right.
so now for us, you see Tyrone, you see LaQuisha, you see, Hassan, or you see Mary. But the point is, beyond all that, behind, underneath all that madness, can you see divine in us? I know we can act savage. I know we can act ignorant. I know we can act other than ourselves. But can you see divine? And what the minister does, he sees divine in us. And what I also think, brother, the minister, what he does, he is an absolute unconditional agent of redemption. So I think in the book, I believe it, the Closing the Gap, he gives a wonderful definition, brother, of what it is to have the heart of a redeemer. So when we do inevitably, whenever we do something, brother, that's kind of, outside of, it becomes really reflective of behavior other than ourselves. The question is, do we have the heart of a redeemer? Because if those elements aren't there first, then we're not going to be really committed to the principles of atonement. Because what will happen is, when inevitably we don't respond right, when inevitably, brother, something comes up that offends us, then we'll give up the ghost. We'll say, bump these niggas, I'm through, I'm gone. Or we'll say it to each other individually, right? So we may not say collectively, but that brother or that sister, but that's not the minister, brother. That's not him. So to create a culture of a mindset, a heart, where now the principles of atonement become effective. Because if those fundamental elements aren't there first, then what will happen is they'll be there, but they'll just be letters. They'll just be words. They won't be living. We won't embrace them with the kind of love that we should embrace them, or the kind of seeing them as tools to create a real environment. We won't do that. But the Quran says we will. We may not do it now, but we will. So the Quran says like this: among the believers, Allah will remove any ill will from our breasts, any rancor from our hearts. So one day it's going to come. It may not look like it now, brother, but it will, because time and circumstances will force us. So right now we haven't been forced, but this enemy is forcing us, brother, to see the value, forcing us to close the gap between God and ourselves, forcing us to close the gap between ourselves and the servants of God, and forcing us to close the gap among ourselves. Circumstances are going to force us, brother, to do that.
Go ahead, man. Yes, sir. I look forward to hearing one of your lectures and or sermons in person, inshallah, because you can always see.
You said you're coming. Did you say you're coming?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm coming to Phoenix very
soon.
You
better come to the mosque.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll be there. Brother Nelson Ramos says, Brother Halim, if you remember speaking in Mosque number 13 in Springfield, Massachusetts, that's where he's from.
Of course I do.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Brother Yusuf, as my brother he still is my brother, but he, he would bring me to Springfield. I would bring him to Buffalo. And I haven't seen, but he was at Savior's Day. I didn't see him though. But I love Springfield. I love to go there. Yes, of course I do, brother.
All praise is due to yes, sir. All right, my next question for you, sir, is the value. Something that I see on social media a lot is what people are referring to as gender wars, where it's the man versus the woman. It's always that. Some of that is entered into religion, where it's brother versus sister. Men who wears the pants. All this. How can we use what advice would you give for atonement and help healing the wounds between the sexes, between men and women, and sisters?
That's a wonderful question, brother. It's a wonderful question. You give really good questions. I think that again, from my vantage point, the best example is Mr. Farrakhan to me. Right? And so when I remember one time, this was years ago, I asked him, I said, why did Allah make himself into a man? Right? And he kind of paused. He said, I don't know. And then I was telling him why, as opposed to making himself into a woman. Right? And he didn't know the answer to that. Right? But he, in a very kind way, he wasn't hard on me, but he just cautioned me about this kind of what you just described, this element of male against female, where that question was kind of adding fuel to that kind of thinking. Mm-hmm. So when I look at him, how he deals with it, how he addresses it, when I see how he handles it, I just think there's no better example than the example of the Honorable Mr. Farrakhan. So when he shares about the sacredness of the female, so for those of us who are under his leadership, we should take his example for that, both male and female. So not only the brothers understanding the sacredness of her, but also at the same time, she understanding her sacredness. And she is, because a lot of times, but not only do brothers not recognize her sacredness, but in too many cases, sisters don't recognize their sacredness at the same time. And so it's manifested with sisters sometimes allowing themselves to be, under the kind of abuse and under the kind of suppression that really is at odds with their own growth, their own development. They don't see themselves as being worthy, so they'll accept things that's really not worthy of them, both those inside the nation and those outside the nation. So now when it comes to us trying to heal the divide between male and female, from my vantage point, where I see the minister, how he is able to apply the balm or the healing that comes from the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it comes from the Bible, that comes from the Quran, that comes from the Word, but most importantly, from his example of his marriages and how he's been able to then show how it should be done. So we're not talking about someone who does it in theory. We're talking about now someone who's able to live it, give us the best demonstration. And so we know how you don't see a man who lusts after women. You don't see a man who is disrespectful of women. And you see a man at the same time who is also the example what it is to be a man. So from I see, from my limited perspective, again, the best example of how we should make this happen is the example both from words and from deed of the Honorable Mr. Farrakhan.
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Go ahead, teach. Beautiful. And you're welcome, Brother Nelson. And Sister Tana says she's happy to wear, she doesn't wear the pants. She wears the pants skirt. She's happy to see the FOY wear the pants or the men wear the pants. And thank you, Sister Tana. Okay, yes, sir, Brother Minister. My next question, and that's right, people bearing witness. Thank you, Sister Rahman, and everyone who was showing love all around the world. My next question for you, sir, is the church and the community activists and their role in the May March. How important was those who were supported? How important was that?
Indispensable, brother. The minister, when he went to, not only spoke to Black men all over the country, but was going to churches and our Christian family. Again, because our Christian families is indispensable. You have a very relatively small Muslim community, but most of our people are involved in some way or other, some way or other, some degree or other with the church. And I would say this too, Brother Joshua, I don't remember what year it was, but I was in DC, and we were in the hotel suite. Well, a lot of people there. I don't remember specifically, but I remember Brother Ishmael being there. I remember Sister Claudette there, the former protocol. But there were a lot of people there. But for some reason, I remember them being there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the minister said this. He said that he described this letter that the Savior had written. And I think our resident imam from Baltimore, Brother Abdul Salam, I think he has this letter, right? So I'm going to paraphrase it. And so he was sharing to us with the letter. He said that the Savior told him, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that human beings like a strange creature. I could be off. I'm maybe not quoting verbatim. He said, wherever the lead fish go, the other fish go too. And then he told the Honorable Elijah that he wouldn't be successful unless he spoke the language right, something like that. Right? And then the minister he said to us, well, what language? He asked us rhetorically, what language? He said, well, to the extent that he said our language is English, so to the extent that we can speak English well, we'd be successful. And then he said that, every discipline has its own language. There's a language among lawyers, a language among doctors. There's a language in the streets. There's a language on the college campuses, right? So speaking those languages, again, will make us successful. But then he said this. He said the real language the Savior was referring to was the language of Christianity. So to the extent that we can speak that language, we'd be successful. And when you look at the minister, how he engages in the church, he's a Muslim minister, but his preaching of Jesus, that many of our Christian family have never heard it preached like that.
That's right.
Never heard it like that, right? And not only that, the minister does it because he says, I don't just preach it, I live it. And he knows Jesus, right? So consequently, he can preach it with conviction. He can preach it with strength. So now when he took and takes that perspective to our Christian family, they responded. It resonated with them because what he did was he took the Million Man March, and as he often does, he frames it now from the language of Christianity. So remember in our lessons, the Savior says this. He says, work cheerfully and fear not. No, he says, work cheerfully and fear not. He says, look in your poison book. Talking about the Bible. Look in your poison book. And so being able to speak the language of our Christian family. Then in the lessons in problem number 13, it says there are 26 letters in the language. If a student learns one letter per day, well, how long would it take him to learn 26 letters? Well, those 26 letters are the letters of the Old Testament, the New Testament. So there are these letters of Paul, letters of Peter, letters of John, and there are 26 letters of them. Again, so that lesson again speaks to the power of being able to speak the language of our Christian family. And when the minister applied that to the Million Man March, our Christian family became it became an absolute critical part of making the Million Man March successful. But again, that's what I was saying earlier, Brother Joshua, 85% of those at the march were Christian, 85%. And brother, I remember this. So after the Million Man March, the minister is the talk of America, black and white. The talk of it. I forgot the name of this. This is Christian station. I think it's called TCB or something like that. I mean, it's a national. They've been around for a long, long time, brother. And I haven't watched them in years. But after the Million Man March, brother, I would watch them. But all they would talk about the ministry. They would talk about the name. They were so afraid. And then we get these Negroes on, right, who and they would just, because now they're trying to assure their slave masters, right? No, Farrakhan, he ain't really the leader, y'all, right? They're trying to make sure that they're kind of made secure, but they were so afraid, and they still are, of the minister. So in the Quran, remember, brother, in the Quran, Moses was afraid Pharaoh was afraid that Moses and Aaron would change the religion of the children of Israel. That fear is always there, always in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, where Abraham is being told by God, "Know thee of a surety, Abraham, your seed will be a stranger in a strange land." But at the end, in that same prophecy, here's what God tells Abraham: that they will go to their fathers in peace. But what is peace? Peace is salam. Peace is Islam. And so the peace that they're afraid of, that they would go, that they would see, is us coming back to ourselves, coming back to our religion. And the minister, again, is the best example of how to engage with our Christian family. He's the best example of how to engage with our Muslim family. He's the best example of how to engage with our nationalist family, our Jehovah's Witness family. He's the best engaged with the hip hop family. He's the best example for us. So what he did back then still is applicable to today. For today, brother Joshua, I thank Allah for now, Mr. Farrakhan, that God has given us this wonderful gift, this wonderful servant who what he's doing for God, what he's doing for the Honorable Elijah, what he's doing for us is beyond measure. And so what I see for him, it bears witness to what the Honorable Elijah said about him, that, brother, you are more valuable to me than 1,000 ships, 1,000 planes, or 1,000 head of sheep, brother. You are more valuable to me, to all the wealth of the earth. He said, because it was here before I was born, it'll be here when I die, but through you, I'll get all of my people. And we're witnessing this, brother, in his work and his mission. I think that it is an obvious reality of God, of the minister's value to our nation, value to our people. And I thank Allah, I'm living in this time period, brother. And even though, my help and my service to him, brother, I could do so much better. It's not where I'd like it to be. I could help, just my service is much room for improvement, but I'm here. And I thank Allah that I'm here. I thank Allah that I'm in my own imperfect way, brother. I thank Allah that I'm helping, trying my best to help the minister, this valuable servant for Allah.
Oh, praise to Allah. You've been representing excellence, sir. People showing you love all around the world. That's awesome, beautiful. Teach. My uncle, Minister Jamil, says, "Assalamu alaikum, dear family, love to all." Sister Sultana said she's definitely going to visit Phoenix. And Minister Jamil said Minister Halim is a national treasure. All praises to Allah.
First of all, before you go there, brother, don't listen to Brother Jamil. I pay him money. I pay him to say all those wonderful things, brother. So now you don't want the check. You don't want the check. Brother, where's my check? I have so. This is not a mutual stroking contest. I have so much respect for my brother. I think he is so valuable to. I called him a little while. It was a couple of weeks ago because I heard he was in the hospital. I heard that that he had appendicitis or whatever. But every once I don't call him a lot, but every once in a while he'll be on my mind, and I'll call him, make sure he's okay, and what have you. I have so much love for him. I have so much respect for him, brother. I just think he's a wonderful, wonderful helper of the almost Mr. Farrakhan. I love his authenticity. I love his absolute. He is just a very authentic, real. When you see Brother Jamil, that's what you got. He don't put on airs. He's himself. So, Brother Jamil, I love you, brother. And you know that may Allah continue to guide you and to bless you, brother, and to strengthen you.
Beautiful. All praises to Allah. And on that positive note, this has been this is part 3 of our series with Minister Abdul Halim Muhammad out of Phoenix, Arizona, by way of Buffalo. So all the Buffalo people will be like, "You forget about Buffalo. We love y'all too." Shout out to the Buffalo Mosque. And inshallah, this will be an ongoing series because you bring something new and powerful every time you come on the People's Podcast, and we greatly appreciate you. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Well, may Allah continue to bless. And Brother Joshua, thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast. Thanking you for giving me the opportunity to to address your audience. And may our Savior continue to guide you and to bless you and to strengthen you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The honor is mine. May Allah continue to bless you as well. And thank you all for watching. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.